Catherine II of Russia, also known as Catherine the Great, was the most renowned and the longest ruling female leader of Russia, reigning from 1762 until her death in 1796 at the age of 67. Born in Stettin, Pomerania, Prussia as Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst-Dornburg, she came to power following a coup d'état when her husband, Peter III, was assassinated. Russia was revitalized under her reign, growing larger and stronger than ever and becoming recognized as one of the great powers of Europe. In both her accession to power and in rule of her empire, Catherine often relied on her noble favorites, most notably Grigory, Orlov and Grigory Potemkin, assisted by highly successful generals such as Alexander Suvorov and Pyotr Rumyantsev, and admirals such as Fyodor Ushakov. She governed at a time when the Russian Empire was expanding rapidly by conquest and diplomacy. In the south, the Crimean Khanate was crushed following victories over the Ottoman Empire in the Russo-Turkish Wars, and Russia colonized the vast territories of Novorossiya along the coasts of the Black and Azov Seas. In the west, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, ruled by Catherine's former lover, King Stanislaw August Poniatowski, was eventually partitioned, with the Russian Empire gaining the largest share. In the east, Russia started to colonize Alaska, establishing Russian America. Catherine reformed the administration of Russian governors, and many new cities and towns were founded on her orders. An admirer of Peter the Great, Catherine continued to modernize Russia along Western European lines. However, military conscription and economy continued to depend on serfdom, and the increasing demands of the state and private landowners led to increased levels of reliance on serfs. This was one of the chief reasons behind several rebellions, including the large-scale Pugachev's rebellion of Cossacks and peasants. The period of Catherine the Great's rule, the Catherinian era, is often considered the golden age of the Russian Empire and the Russian nobility. The Manifesto on Freedom of the Nobility, issued during the short reign of Peter III and confirmed by Catherine, freed Russian nobles from compulsory military estate service. Construction of many mansions of the nobility, in the classical style endorsed by the Empress, changed the face of the country. She enthusiastically supported the ideals of the Enlightenment, thus earning the status of an enlightened despot. As a patron of the arts, she presided over the age of the Russian Enlightenment, when the Smolny Institute, a period when the first state-financed higher education institution for women in Europe was established. Early life. Catherine's father, Christian August, Prince of Anhalt-Zerbst, belonged to the ruling German family of Anhalt, but held the rank of a Prussian general in his capacity as governor of the city of Stettin. Born Sophia Augusta Friederike in Stettin, Pomerania, two of her first cousins became kings of Sweden, Gustav III and Charles XIII. In accordance with the custom then prevailing in the ruling dynasties of Germany, she received her education chiefly from a French governess and from tutors. Catherine's childhood was quite uneventful. She once read to her correspondent Baron Grimm, "I see nothing of interest in it." Quote, although Catherine was born a princess, her family had very little money. Catherine was to come to power based on her mother's relations to wealthy members of royalty. The choice of Sophia as wife of her second cousin, the prospective Tsar Peter of Holstein-Gottorp, resulted from some amount of diplomatic management in which Count Lustig, Peter's aunt, and Frederick II of Prussia took part. Lustig and Frederick wanted to strengthen the friendship between Prussia and Russia to weaken Austria's influence and ruin the Russian Chancellor, Bestuzhev, on whom Empress Elizabeth relied, and who acted as a known partisan of Russo-Austrian cooperation. Catherine first met Peter III at the age of 10. Based on her writings, she found Peter detestable upon meeting him. She disliked his pale complexion and his fondness for alcohol at such a young age. Peter also still played with toy soldiers. Catherine later wrote that she stayed at one end of the castle and Peter on the other. The diplomatic intrigue failed, largely due to the intervention of Sophie's mother, Johanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp. Historical accounts portray her as a cold, abusive woman who loved gossip and court intrigues. Johanna's hunger for fame centered on her daughter's prospects of becoming Empress of Russia, but she infuriated Empress Elizabeth, who eventually banned her from the country for spying for King Frederick of Prussia. The Empress Elizabeth knew the family well. She had intended to marry Princess Johanna's brother Charles Augustus, who had died of smallpox in 1759 before the wedding could take place. Nonetheless, Empress Elizabeth took a strong liking to the daughter, who on arrival in Russia in 1744 spared no effort to ingratiate herself not only with the Empress Elizabeth, but with her husband and with the Russian people. She applied herself to learning the Russian language with such zeal, she rose at night and walked about her bedroom barefoot, repeating her lessons. This led to a severe attack of pneumonia in March 1744. When she wrote her memoirs, she said she made up her mind when she came to Russia to do whatever was necessary, and to profess to believe whatever was required of her, to become qualified to wear the crown. Princess Sophia's father, a devout German Lutheran, opposed his daughter's conversion to Eastern Orthodoxy, despite his objection. On the 28th of June 1744, the Russian Orthodox Church received Princess Sophia as a member with the new name Catherine and the patronymic. On the following day, the formal betrothal took place. The long-planned dynastic marriage finally occurred on the 21st of August 1745 in St. Petersburg. Sophia had turned 16. Her father did not travel to Russia for the wedding. The bridegroom, known then as Peter von Holstein-Gottorp, had become Duke of Holstein-Gottorp in 1739. As she recalls in her memoirs, as soon as she arrived in Russia, she fell ill with a pleuritis that almost killed her. She credits her survival to frequent bloodletting. In a single day, she had 4 phlebotomies. Her mother, being opposed to this practice, fell into the Empress' disfavor. When her situation looked desperate, her mother wanted her confessed by a Lutheran priest. Awaking from her delirium, however, Catherine said, "I don't want any Lutheran, I want my Orthodox father." This raised her in the Empress' esteem. The newlyweds settled in the palace of Oranienbaum, which remained the residence of the young court for many years to come. Count Andrei Shuvalov, chamberlain to Catherine, knew the diarist James Boswell well, and Boswell reports that Shuvalov shared private information regarding the monarch's intimate affairs. Some of these rumors included that Peter took a mistress while Catherine carried on liaisons with Sergei Saltykov, Grigory Grigorovich Orlov, Alexander Vasilchikov, Grigory Potemkin, Stanislaw August Poniatowski, Alexander Vasilchikov, and others. She became friends with Princess Ekaterina Vorontsova-Dashkova, the sister of her husband's mistress, who introduced her to several powerful political groups that opposed her husband. Peter III's temperament became quite unbearable for those who resided in the palace. He would announce trying drills in the morning to male servants, who later joined Catherine in her room to sing and dance until late hours. Catherine became pregnant with her second child, Anna, who only lived to 4 months, in 1759. Due to various rumors of Catherine's promiscuity, Peter was led to believe he was not the child's biological father and is known to have proclaimed, "Go to the devil," when Catherine angrily dismissed his accusation. She thus spent much of this time alone in her own private boudoir to hide away from Peter's abrasive personality. Catherine recalled in her memoirs her optimistic and resolute mood before her accession to the throne. "I used to say to myself that happiness and misery depend on ourselves. If you feel unhappy, raise yourself above unhappiness, and so act that your happiness may be independent of all eventualities." Reign of Peter III and the coup d'état of July 1762. After the death of the Empress Elizabeth on 5 January 1762, Peter succeeded to the throne as Emperor Peter III, and Catherine became Empress Consort. The imperial couple moved into the new Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The Tsar's eccentricities and policies, including a great admiration for the Prussian king, Frederick II, alienated the same groups that Catherine had cultivated. Besides, Peter intervened in a dispute between his Duchy of Holstein and Denmark over the province of Schleswig. Russia and Prussia fought each other during the 7 Years' War until Peter's accession. Peter's insistence on supporting Frederick II of Prussia, who had seen Berlin occupied by Russian troops in 1760, but now suggested partitioning Polish territories with Russia, eroded much of his support among the nobility. In July 1762, barely 6 months after becoming emperor, Peter took a holiday with his Holstein-born courtiers and relatives to Oranienbaum, leaving his wife in St. Petersburg. On the night of the 8th of July, Catherine the Great was given the news that one of her co-conspirators had been arrested by her estranged husband, and that all they had been planning must take place at once. She left the palace and departed for the Ishmailovsky regiment, where Catherine delivered a speech asking the soldiers to protect her from her husband. Catherine then left with the regiment to go to the Semenovsky barracks, where the clergy was waiting to ordain her as the sole occupant of the Russian throne. She had her husband arrested and forced him to sign a document of abdication, leaving no one to dispute her accession to the throne. On the 17th of July 1762, 8 days after the coup and just 6 months after his accession to the throne, Peter III died at Prussia, at the hands of Alexei Orlov. Historians find no evidence for Catherine's complicity in the supposed assassination. At the time of Peter III's overthrow, other potential rival claimants to the throne existed. Ivan VI, in closed confinement at Schlüsselburg, in Lake Ladoga from the age of 6 months, and Yelizaveta Alexeyevna Tarakanova. Ivan VI was assassinated during an attempt to free him as part of a failed coup against Catherine. Catherine, like Empress Elizabeth before her, had given strict instructions that he was to be killed in the event of any such attempt. Ivan was thought to be insane because of his years of solitary confinement, so might have made a poor emperor, even as a figurehead. Catherine, though not descended from any previous Russian emperor of the Romanov dynasty, succeeded her husband as Empress Regnant. She followed the precedent established when Catherine I succeeded her husband Peter the Great in 1725. Historians debate Catherine's technical status, some seeing her as a regent or as a usurper, tolerable only during the minority of her son, Grand Duke Paul. In the 1770s, a group of nobles connected with Paul considered a new coup to depose Catherine and transfer the crown to Paul, whose power they envisaged restricting in a kind of constitutional monarchy. However, nothing came of this, and Catherine reigned until her death.